and I think the big question is, how are folks going to, because I think a lot of the people here basically want to get jobs in the industry, how are they going to take all this information and translate it into getting jobs? And the other question is, who's going to be the big Woodward and Bernstein of the next generation, and what format will that Woodward and Bernstein be issuing their investigative reports? It's true, I think you can carve a niche in this media landscape on your own. Look at Perez Hilton, which is a slightly lowbrow example of what you gave. He's not going to win a Polk Award anytime soon, but he was basically just a blogger sitting at the Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf on Sunset Boulevard blogging, and today he's an internationally known media sensation. He's world famous. So he used his smarts, and I think his real name is like Ed Lavendere or something, but he used his smarts and his personality and his charisma to make a name for himself. That's one extreme. The other extreme is that I just read an article where a very famous author, and unfortunately the name escapes me at this moment, but he's written many books, wrote an article for the Daily Beast and was outraged because he said they wanted to pay him $250, and he said, forget about it. And there are a lot of people who have blogs. If I had a nickel for every person that I know who's starting a blog, I'd be able to buy you all lunch. The question is, who's reading those blogs? And then even if you get blogs that are well read, like on the Huffington Post or the Daily Beast or the Drudge Report or wherever, the question is, are you going to get paid for it? I know quite a few people who are honored to have the privilege of writing something for the Huffington Post and are competing and falling over each other for the opportunity to do so. But they're not making a living off of that. What they are doing is getting the information they're passionate about out. And I think, unfortunately, it always boils down to not just getting the information out there, but people have to eat, and they've got to pay their rent. And that's the point. How do people today take all the things that we're saying and get a real good paying job or a paying job out of it? Do you want to take a shot at it, Rossana?
Solve that
Let me see. We've actually laid off, 30 people in 8 months.
What would you say?
I said we've laid off 30 people in 8 months. At the same time, we've got, some new people coming into the newsroom. So, again, I think, there is an evolution, and you have to find, your role in the entry point in there. I think for the folks coming out of journalism schools, there are some challenges. There are journalism schools preparing students to be print journalists or just to be kind of one-dimensional, to be writers. And there's a different department to deal with video and broadcast and all of that. And I think that some of them are ill-served when they come out into a marketplace that's requiring kind of this multi-dimensional, this ability to do more than just Google, a story. I'm from the time where you actually hit the street and interviewed people as opposed to doing a search. But, I'm aware that I am increasingly in the minority. So, I think there are opportunities. I think that while we all struggle with those changes, I think kind of that basic reporter's job that Juan describes is still relevant. And even if it means you have to carry, more than a tape recorder, I think it's still relevant. It's kind of, going out there, getting the story, at the same time as you're kind of really reporting, and you're doing it in a short time frame. One of the things that's happening, in my newsroom is that in the past you kind of went out, got the story, when it was ready you wrote it. Now you're kind of writing, you're releasing a sentence at a time because of the demands of all of, the different platforms. And I think, in the end we become better at doing that and kind of reaching the demands. I was sitting here thinking, as you guys are discussing kind of the model, which would be great if we could find an economic model, that a lot of newspapers today are nonprofits.
They just didn't set out to be.
And so and doing that by default, how you continue, to figure out kind of the ways. Again, at the end of the day, the economic model, we have to pay employees. Things like universal health care will impact employers, in a way that I think is helpful. And, I'm not sure what other ways. I like to hear more from Juan about how we can really be activists in this, in either finding this model or how government can really help to relieve that pressure, perhaps in the way they relieved it for the banking industry.
Well, I have lots of ideas about what can be done. I mean, in economic models, it's only a question of really people focusing on developing it. I would say, first of all, what's the gold mine right now in communications? What's the gold mine? Where is money being made in mass communications? As you mentioned, it's being made with cell phones, right? This is
Texas.
all you got to do is look at the newspapers and who's advertising, right? Every newspaper in America has lots and lots of pages advertising phones. That's where money is. Number two, where the money is cable. Cable revenues in America tripled in the last 8 years. It's up to like $85 billion a year in cable. Because obviously, as cable moves from video to has moved increasingly to triple play, there's an exponential growth in cable revenues. Right? So that is where the money in the mass media is right now. It's in the phones and it's in the cable systems. In other words, it's in the people who control the means of transmission. It's not the individual companies that provide the content. It's the people who control the means of transmission, the gatekeepers, the navigators, the Googles, the Apples. These are the people who have the money. So what we have to do is we have to develop a model that taxes them for the production of news. Right? You tax them for the production of news. Your average cable company, Time Warner or Comcast, pays 5% in a municipal franchise fee to the local government. Right? But their revenues are exploding, and they're only paying the 5% on the video. They're not paying it on phone and internet service. So this is a huge battle going on in the federal courts right now. Will the cable companies who are using municipal rights of way to string their wires pay a full percentage for all of the services they provide or only for the video services? That would be a huge increase in revenue to local governments. If you then did a 1% media tax on $85 billion a year, increase the franchise from 5 to 6%, dedicate 1% to local media, you would unlock $850 million a year in subsidies for local news and information. That's just on cable. The phones, we got to free our phones. We have to free the phones from the companies that sell them, because they're all doing proprietary software. Yeah, Apple has all the apps. But you can only use the apps that Apple sells you. You can't use anybody else's apps, right? So that the thing is, we have to free our phones, we have to tax our phones, and we have to tax the cable companies, and that will create a huge pot of money to subsidize original news and reporting if the public forces their leaders to do it. That's the key question. If the public tells the leaders we need information and news. And then you could all get paid a decent salary no matter where you work. You could even do tax credits, the old tax credit, empowerment zones, $25,000 tax credit to any media company, internet, newspaper, whatever, that hires a person to produce original news. $25,000 tax credit, like the empowerment zones do in distressed communities. We're a distressed industry, right? So we could do that as well, tax credits. There's all kinds of ways that doesn't have to impinge upon content, you're concerned, but uses the levers of established government policies to say the people need to be informed in the most comprehensive way possible.